She was 17, wearing a handmade orange ribbon and a white mask for the town's Halloween dance. Laughter filled the community hall. The music echoed through the gym walls, and for a moment, everything felt safe. Then, she stepped outside for air. The door swung shut. The music kept playing. But she never came back. No one saw her leave. No one heard her scream. Only a single crown, bent and missing one gem, was found near the back door. 22 years later, a woman wearing that same white mask walked into a quiet facility on the edge of town. Her name? Lily Morrison, the girl everyone thought was gone forever. This is the story of a family broken by silence, of a father who hid the truth to protect what he loved, and of a sister who followed every clue until the past finally opened its doors. Before we begin, tell me, where in the world are you watching from? I read every single comment, and I love seeing where each one of you is watching from. Portland smells like rain in October, wet cedar, cold metal, the sweet burn of porch candles. On Halloween night, 1983, Selwood's old houses wear orange bulbs like crowns. Paper skeletons slap the glass. Jack-o'-lanterns breathe river wind. Steps creak. Screen doors clap. Somewhere a tinny radio leaks a synth beat under the rush of trick-or-treaters. The street is a moving gallery of masks. Plastic capes drag leaves. Candy buckets thump like small drums. Teenagers lean on fences, pretending not to care while caring about everything. Eyes, hair, who's looking? An outdoor speaker pops, then returns. Laughter rolls down the block and breaks against wet sidewalks. At the corner, the community hall glows. Inside, a dance unspools in fading colors, scuffed boards, twisted streamers, punch bowls sweating on folding tables. It smells of cinnamon, hairspray, damp wool. A handmade sign reads, "Selwood Harvest Hop." A camera flash rips the room for a heartbeat, whitening faces and catching one mask brighter than the rest. Smooth, oval, unnervingly calm. A small scratch cuts its left cheek, the quietest of scars. The wearer tilts her head as if listening to a private song. At her temple, a thin orange ribbon tucked beneath hair like a secret. On the stoop, drizzle turns brighter air to mist. Far off, a train horn drags across the river. Each time the hall door opens, music leaks and breath fogs the night. Then the door seals and sound narrows again. People talk in close circles. The mask watches the exit as if it were a mouth that might speak. The disco ball sweeps light. The eye holes glint, not empty. A scuffed Polaroid sits on the snack table near the punch. Tape puckering its hinge, glitter stuck to the strap like a stubborn fingerprint. Someone fingers it, then sets it down. Rain freckles the window, duplicating reflections. For a second there are two white faces, one inside, one outside, until a hand latches the door and the world becomes one again. Feet scrape, the speakers hum. A breeze turns the sign on its nail. The mask turns once more toward the night, like a compass needle unsure of north, and dissolves into the party's bright motion. 22 years turn a party into a rumor with a date. By late October 2005, Selwood's corners are the same, their edges softer, the paint scuffed by weather and time. Rain stitches light between poles, the river mutters under bridges no one remembers learning the names of. In a basement under the police annex, a microfilm reader ticks and whirs like an insect under glass. Fluorescent tubes stutter, resetting the room by a fraction. File boxes breathe dust. The concrete table holds evidence photographs, pumpkins, a gym stage, a white mask under a disco ball. A faded orange ribbon sleeps inside a plastic sleeve, its color steeped to tea. A steady hand nudges the focus dial until an old headline sharpens, "Last seen at Harvest Hop." Grain swims, letters steady. Up on the street, the neighborhood rehearses its ritual. A boy in a skeleton suit, heel-toes down a stoop. A girl with a felt witch hat steadies a pumpkin pail with two hands. Radios drift classic rock. The air tastes of clove and wet leaves. TV light flickers behind curtains. Blue, warm blue again, as if houses breathe through their screens. In a picture window, rain writes soft static. Between reflection and room, an oval white shape floats at an angle that shouldn't belong to mirrors. Left cheek, there, a thin scratch like punctuation. A car passes, water hisses, the oval vanishes. Then it's there again, closer, patient. Below, the microfilm clicks to its end. The reel spins free with a metallic rattle. The hand on the focus knob pauses. From the stairhead, a soft, slow knocking. Once, twice. The fluorescent tube hums, steadies. On the table, a fresh Polaroid finishes developing, color seeping into form, a rain-blurred window, streetlight glare, and, barely like a secret brave enough to try, an oval face of white watching from the glass. The knocking comes a third time. Claire Morrison learned to see by learning to fail. At 15, she aimed a hand-me-down Polaroid at anything that held still, the dog, a white fence, her sister Lily under porch string lights, and stacked misfires in a shoebox. She learned the slow math of light. Wait between cloud and sun, brace elbows, breathe out. As her pictures got sharper, life blurred. One Halloween vanished from the frame and refused to come back. By 2005, at 37, Claire is paid to notice what others step over. The Portland Police Bureau calls her a forensic photographer. She calls herself a listener with a camera. She listens to shoe scuffs, to the habit a hand has of returning a drawer to the same crooked angle, to the way rain carries alley light. When a scene is old, she coaxes it, crack a window to rebuild a draft, dust a groove to read a pattern, meter for relics instead of truth. Her Selwood walk-up is small and exacting. Coffee tin on the counter, dark towels so bleach, never tattles. On the shelf, field manuals, a thrifted yearbook, a Polaroid SX70 with cracked leather and glitter still clinging to the strap from a dance she does not name. She hasn't cleaned it. Some stains are instructions, not accidents. She keeps a rule: don't photograph family. Grief bent it. One frame hides in a drawer, two girls with sparklers, letters scratched into dusk. The edge is overexposed, the bulbs lingered. Lily's half-smile knows exactly where the light is and how to keep it. At work she moves like a guest in someone else's house, quiet with doors, gentle with air. Colleagues find her steady, private, strangely calming. Detective Mark Benson, gray at the temples and economical with verbs, asks for her when a scene is more memory than evidence. He trusts the beat of silence she gives a room before she begins. They share late shifts in the annex basement where the microfilm lives. Tonight, he sent her for the old Halloween file because she can thread the temperamental reader without turning headlines to barcode. It isn't favoritism, it's practice. Childhood taught her the patience of analog things. You don't yank, you coax. Her parents lived 10 minutes away, and a century to one side. Thomas Morrison still clips articles into a binder as if order could be assigned. Lydia makes tea strong enough to carry a conversation, then forgets to drink it. Lily's room is a sealed jar of 1983, soft posters, an orange ribbon pinned to a mirror, a dress bag yellowing in the closet. They don't visit on Halloween. They say they are tired. Claire lets the lie sit because it keeps the air breathable. Her fragility isn't a tremble. It's the hairline crack that decides the next decade. She dates, then apologizes for rope-shaped hours. She runs the river path at dawn. She keeps spare batteries in a jar labeled in pencil. In the bottom, a single candy bracelet bead, a secret she refuses to inventory. 3 soft taps at the annex door pull her from the screen. She turns the focus dial one notch. The headline sharpens, "Last seen at Harvest Hop." Mark steps in, wearing the tired smile cops earn when a case fights back by refusing to be a case. "Machine still breathing?" he asks. "Barely," she says. "Like it remembers." "The captain wants only a quick look," he adds. We're not reopening, just context for a media request. Claire logs the real numbers out of habit. She doesn't write Lily's name. Mark slides an evidence sleeve onto the table. An orange ribbon, faded to weak tea. Found in a box labeled costumes, he says. Community hall cleanup, custodian turned it in. Chain of custody, she asks. Documented, just old, dusty. Probably nothing. She fits nitrile gloves, then waits. Context first. Tag pin, stray hair. A single clear filament sparkles under the tube light. She breathes out, reaches for tweezers only after she has decided not to shake. Do you ever go to the Hop anymore? Mark asks. No, she says. The music's worse. He smiles. You never liked it. I like evidence, she says. Music doesn't testify. The desk phone rings, a landline sound that belongs in a file. Mark answers, listens, covers the receiver. Front desk, he says. Custodian across the street reports someone standing under the community hall awning. White face, not moving. Claire sets the tweezers down like live wire. The fluorescent tubes flicker. The room inhales. On the table, a fresh Polaroid she shot as a focus test finishes blooming. Rain, a pane of glass, a pale oval at the edge that might be glare, might be more. Don't go up there alone, Mark says. I won't, she answers, already reaching for the switch. The room goes dark first. The annex stairwell smells like mop water and old paper. Mark takes the steps 2 at a time, one hand on the rail. Claire keeps pace, counting her breaths so her lungs don't decide to live in 1983. Outside, the rain is the kind that doesn't pick sides, down, sideways, up from tires. Across the street, the community hall's awning holds a shallow silver pool. Beneath it, a pale oval hangs in the dusk, like a low moon. Stop, Mark says, soft enough that it's instruction, not order. They hang back under the police eave, half hidden by the brick. Claire lifts her camera, meters for the streetlight, and shoots without flash, the way you photograph something that might change its mind if it knew you were looking. The instant image buzzes and feeds out with a wet paper sound. She tucks it inside her jacket to develop it against warmth. The awning drips. The pale oval doesn't blink. Custodian said no one's gone in or out, Mark says. Front door's dead bolted. He's got the key. Call him over, Claire says, eyes on the oval. We'll clear the inside. The custodian arrives at a trot, winded, rain-slick, keys clattering like a nervous pocket. Been running back and forth, he says. I saw it, white face, just standing there. Thought it was a decoration, then it wasn't. Inside, the hall is what a town remembers itself with. Folding tables, a shrine of lost and found, a corkboard that doubles as a family tree. The stage curtain snores softly in the draft. Claire works the room clockwise. Exit first, then corners, then the middle, then back to whatever itches. Mark takes the hall perimeter, nudging doors open with a knuckle, talking to the dark by not talking. At the far wall, a lumbering trophy case is a museum of small victories. Youth League plaques, a poster for the Selwood Harvest Hop in pumpkin orange, a photo envelope bloated by damp. Claire snaps an overall shot, then a detail. The envelope's label. Handoff, photos 1983, dance, in block letters. Someone's idea of order delayed by 2 decades. The flap isn't sealed. Find something? Mark calls. Maybe, she says. Lab humidity's a crime. She slits the envelope carefully and coaxes out a stack of prints that smell like a drawer no one opens. Wet chemistry, old dust, the faint bite of vinegar. Teens fixed mid-spin. A punch bowl reflected as an orange trembling planet. A disco ball caught like a black sun. And there, off-center, cropped at the temple, the white mask, scratch at the left cheek, the angle of a head recognizing a door. Claire turns a print over. In the bottom corner, the lab stamp bleeds purple. Novi 1283, weeks after Halloween. Not a surprise. Community labs batch by convenience. But it crawls anyway. On the next print, a sliver of reflection in the window forgives the camera a small miracle. A jacket logo ghosting backward. Har something? The rest fogged by droplets. She writes the letters in her notebook, backward and forward, until Harper makes sense and doesn't. Harper Timber had a yard near the river then. Her father used to say, their trucks could turn a street to splinters if you didn't mind your mirrors. At the entry vestibule, damp makes a compass of the floor. A faint trail of darker footprints curves toward the side door. Thin heel, not sneakers. The tread shows a worn notch at the ball. The kind of wear a dancer earns, or a costume shoe never designed for weather. Glitter freckles two of the prints like a small constellation spilled. Could be from a decoration box, Mark says, crouching. Could be, Claire says, photographing each print with a ruler for scale. She rocks the flash to lift texture from damp wood. The pattern blooms like a fingerprint. The side door is double locked. The window above it is latched poorly, the hook hanging like a shrug. On the sill, an orange thread is pinched in a splinter, frayed to a halo. Claire breathes once, steady, then plucks it free with tweezers and calves squeezed against the chair so it can't skid. Ribbons everywhere in October, Mark says, trying on skepticism because it fits easier than hope. This one knows where it's been, Claire answers, labeling the vial. The color has steeped the way old ribbons do, tea instead of fire. She doesn't say it aloud. Lily's ribbon aged to the same weak shade. From the stage, a video cart looks like a hotel luggage rack that learned to take orders. The CRT has weight, the VCR has opinions, the power strip has a will to live if you talk nice. Claire talks nice. The screen stutters, then steadies on blue. Someone's labeled a tape. Hop 83, a single apostrophe like a drawn breath. She presses play. The tracking eats the first 30 seconds like a dog with a newspaper. Then the image holds. Staccato lights, a gym floor, music a generation and a half old. In the bottom corner, someone's mom waves too close to the lens. Downstage right, a girl in white tilts a mask until it is the face. And the face is gone. Pause, Mark says. Claire does. On the edge of frame, a man's arm in a dark work jacket crosses the girl's shoulder blade. Not quite a touch, only the idea of one. The sleeve shows a stitched patch. The letters are too soft to read on the pause, but the color block is the same as Harper Timber's old logos from city permits. She saw one in a file once. She winds a quarter-second forward. The arm withdraws. The mask looks past the camera to something off-screen, then steps that way, the ribbon's end vanishing like a flame tucked into itself. A hiss from the awning makes all of them look up. The custodian lurches to the window. He whispers, "There," like the vowel is made of glass. Claire and Mark join him. Outside, under the puddled canvas, the white oval stands inches nearer, the scratch now a breath from legible. The mask holds. No move, no tilt, like a photo in a hand that doesn't sweat. They go out together, custodian trailing, keys a small bell, rain needles, forearms. The streetlight writes their shadows backwards. Up close, the oval is a mask all right, cheap plastic, ribbon tied into a schoolyard bow. But there's no face behind it. The mask is hung on a bent wire taped to the post, the tape wet and grim. The wire ends are capped with rubber, the careful kind you'd use if you didn't want to mar paint. Mark checks the shadows. A prank, he says, testing the word. Claire looks at the wire caps, the even spacing of tape wraps, the way the bow was tied with left over right, then right over left, muscle memory of someone who ties for a living. She photographs it all. Gravity tugs the mask so that the scratch hangs at the wrong angle, like a scar telling a story about a different face. The Polaroid in her jacket is ready now. She peels it out and looks. The awning is a wet gray canvas. The mask is a white coin. In the right margin, a reflection she didn't see before has kept a secret. The hall window has a dark mirror, and in it, someone standing where the VCR cart sits now, turned towards the street. Not decoration, not wire. A person. The outline of a head, the slope of a shoulder, the suggestion of hair pulled back. "Someone's inside," she says. Mark turns, every angle of him trained to choose which door. "Which way?" "Stage corner," she says, "by the cart." They move as one, through rain that decides to become a curtain. When they push the hall door, the VCR blue still glows. The tape now shows only ceiling and wiring, as if the camera had been tilted to stare at the world's practicals. The stage curtain shifts in a draft that isn't a draft, and the side door, double-locked a minute ago, shows a lock turned horizontal, like a mouth learning no. "Back," Mark says, scanning the corners. Claire's camera whirs to readiness. On the stage, a single round object rests where the mask wearer stood in the paused frame. It is not a prop. It is the crown from a homecoming queen costume. Cheap base metal, plastic gems, one missing, the prongs bent like teeth after a hard year. She takes the picture, then a second nearer, then a third with a ruler for scale. On the felt underside, a thread catches the light, orange, weak tea, the same as the splinter's gift. Next to it sits a plastic button backing, the kind used to pin name tags to sashes at school dances. The paper has gone to pulp. Ink bleeds one letter, L. "Claire," Mark says, and doesn't finish. "Keep rolling," she says, and doesn't look up. The fluorescent tubes flicker. Someone knocks at the front door. Once. Twice. 3 times. Mark signals the custodian to stay put, 2 fingers down, palm out. He nods, wide-eyed, like he's been sworn into quiet. Claire angles to the vestibule with the camera up but not aimed at a person. Training draws a line between documentation and escalation. The door's little square of wired glass shows nothing but rain jumping under streetlight. "Police," Mark calls, voice even. "Door's locked. Step back from the threshold." No reply. Only rain, the deeper bass of a bus half a block away, and the slow pad of water falling from jacket shoulders. Mark unlatches. They open to wet and empty sidewalk. A flyer for a church bake sale skates across the entry like a leaf that learned to read. There are no stairs to vanish down. The hall sits flush with the street. Whoever knocked knows speed, or doors, or both. They close it again. Claire shoots the knob, the threshold, the outside stoop. The prints from earlier are wetter, their edges smudged into mere damp. On the top step, however, a dry patch shows the shape of a foot that kept the rain off a coin-sized circle. She bends until the camera's near the concrete and takes it, the world flattening to aggregate and sand. When she stands, the custodian is looking at the VCR cart like it has learned to breathe. "Wasn't on when I locked up," he says. "I cut the power at the breaker most nights." "Someone knows the panel," Mark says. "Or you left it hot." "I don't," the custodian says, insulted by the physics. Claire pulls on the thread she's been holding since the envelope. If someone is feeding them 1983, someone has access to 1983. She returns to the trophy case. Between plaques, a thin gray VHS clamshell had blended into the wood. She pries it out. Hopper 3. Copy is sharpied on the spine, on the back, in smaller script, for TM. Mark sees it when she does. His mouth opens, then closes like he's tasted a name, and decided to keep it. Thomas Morrison. Her father, ex-cop. Sometimes donors sent him duplicates to aid the investigation, and sometimes... Claire doesn't finish the sentence because she doesn't want to live in 2 rooms at once. She slides the tape into the VCR and fast-forwards with the sound down to spare the speakers the static war. The time code stutters, then races. Faces blur to colors, then to ghosts. At 00:41:12, the camera operator pivots, unsteady, apologetic, and catches the stage curtain. A shadow moves behind it like a misbehaving cord. She frame by frames the next second, an arm in a dark work jacket, a hand not touching a shoulder, the mask turning to where the arm retreats. At 0:41:15, a different angle, someone else's camera, shows the gym door cracking open. A figure in that jacket stands just outside, backlit by the hall's brighter hallway. Head turned so the logo patch flashes. "Harper!" The rest washes in glare. "Freeze there," Mark says, leaning in. "Already did," Claire answers, but runs it back 2 frames anyway. She snaps the TV, screen glare be damned, then the VCR counter, then the tape spine in the deck, a full chain of how they know what they think they know. The custodian edges closer. "The guy used to park a flatbed right on the corner back then," he says. "Harper Timber. We rented them risers some years. He drank our coffee and told us our stage was crooked." "He's still around?" Mark asks. "Think he retired," the custodian shrugs. "Company changed hands. Their sign came down after the floods." A thud comes from the hall's rear stair to the storage level, more felt than heard. The sound of a box resigning to gravity. Mark gestures. Claire nods. He takes the stair. She circles the opposite hallway to Brackett. The custodian stays where the smart people in movies never stay, which is to say in the open. The storage room smells like paint, mildew, and fell Christmas trees. Claire's light rakes shelves, papier-mâché moons, tubs of tangled string lights, a cardboard wardrobe dotting the concrete with rust from its own staples. From the floor, a skid mark in dust like a shoe pivoted, and decided against explaining itself. On a high shelf, a box reads "Costumes," Queen in a felt-tip hand that tried to be neat. Inside, a dress bag yellowing at the seams, a cheap tiara cousin to the one on stage, a plastic sash curled like a sleeping snake. Pinned to the sash with a safety clasp is a circle of cardstock turned to suede with time. The ink is a watercolor of letters. It does not say Lily. It says L-Y, which is what time does to names. It eats the middle. She photographs the pin clasp. It is the same brand as the backing on stage, the little patent number in microscopic relief. Outside of cops and seamstresses, few know to look for that. One of the tiara prongs holds a hair, clear, fine, real enough to lift gooseflesh on her forearm, because it remembers a scalp. She recovers it to paper and then to an envelope, like a votive, passing between hands. Mark reappears at the door, a small box in his grip. He sets it on the floor between them and opens it like he's diffusing an apology. Inside are Polaroid cartridges in sealed foil, expiry 1984, a cracked plastic frame, and one loose print curled by heat, a house front with a rural mailbox at the road. Numbers on the post read 16, the last digit gone to glare. On the mailbox, a faded sticker of a timber company's logo, Harper, in sunburnt red. "Where was this?" Claire asks. "Bottom shelf behind the tree stands," he says. "Not in any inventory I can find." "Who keeps camera film in a costume box?" she says to the air, which does not answer because it respects suspense. From upstairs, the landline rings again, long and patient. The custodian yelps, "I'll get it," and hurries away. His steps on wood say he chose to be brave in exactly the way movies punish. Claire and Mark follow less quickly because procedure is not cinema, and someone has to keep track of what failure costs. At the desk, the custodian holds the phone at his ear with his face gone chalk. "Nobody?" he whispers when he sees them. Then louder, as if it works that way, "Nobody there." The line is still open. Claire steps close. A hiss, then a brittle whisper of music arrives, as if traveling through a pocket radio held under a coat. The same synth line from the VHS, thin as a thread. It lingers 2 measures, then someone on the line exhales, not as a word or a name, but as the weight of a body deciding against speech. The line clicks. Dial tone. "It could be the tape audio bleeding through the building," Mark offers, but his eyebrows don't sign the same document as his mouth. "It could be," Claire allows, and writes, "Music match," into her notebook where she will later draw a line to Mark, past roll, and Harper. When they step onto the sidewalk again, the mask is gone from the awning post. The tape residue clings like a bruise. Claire turns slowly, sweeping the eaves, the parked cars, the black glass of windows. Down the block, a figure stands under a street tree, looking not at them, but at the old dance hall sign. The figure's face is not visible, hood up, hands in pockets, but the posture is not the posture of a teenager out past curfew. It's too still. It's the posture of someone waiting for the page to turn. "Evening?" Mark calls. No answer. A pickup passes and throws light across the figure. The silhouette glints at the cheekbone like plastic does if it's thin. "Don't," Mark starts, but Claire is already moving, not fast, not foolish, a photographer obeying the rule about distance and perspective. She crosses halfway when the figure walks, not away but across, slipping between parked cars to the opposite sidewalk and vanishing into a gap that looks like a driveway, but isn't. Claire reaches it and finds only a wooden gate, latched with a loop of wire, the same tidy leftover right knot as the mask bow. She photographs the latch, the knot, the scuff on the gate rail polished by recent hands. On the gravel, a bus transfer stub has pasted itself in the wet. She pries it up with a palette knife from her kit and sleeves it. Tremet transfer. Date: Nov. 18-1983. Sharpie notes: Selwood to Oaks PK. Someone rode away from here after or long enough after. The stub can be a planted relic. It can also be a breadcrumb that refused compost. Beneath the stub's dark patch, 2 candy bracelet beads blink up, one pink, one white, polished by tire spritz and time. Claire picks them with tweezers and feels her throat recognize shape before her mind does. In her jar at home, a single bead waits for these two to prove it isn't an orphan. Mark's phone buzzes. The new kind. The flip he hates because it doesn't keep conversations the way desks do. He listens, then looks at Claire. "Front desk again," he says. "Package for you, no sender, left on the counter." They walk back through the annex's wet fluorescence. On the front desk sits a brown envelope the size of a paperback, edges damp from air not touch. Her name is printed in all caps, the strokes too careful, as if the writer didn't trust their own hand. Inside, a Polaroid cartridge sealed in foil and a note on ticket stock, cut from what might have been a raffle roll. 3 words, block printed. "You're late, Claire." She opens the foil with care you give to a thing that may choose to be brittle. The cartridge slides home with the snug click of a decade-old habit that doesn't rust. She aims at the counterbell because it is both reflective and stupid. The camera breathes and spits a square. They wait, the image ghosting into flesh. The bell blooms, the desktop swells, and in the glass of the entry door behind them, the street portrays itself. At the vanishing point under the hall sign, the white oval bides, left cheek scratch, bow tied left over right, then right over left. The mask holds the lens like a held breath, a challenge as old as childhood. "Find me." Mark turns the deadbolt on the annex door. "We bring this upstairs to the captain in the morning," he says. "Chain, documentation, the works." Claire nods, already photographing the envelope and note, the desk clock, the position of the cartridge, her own hands to prove whose they were. She puts the candy beads on the counter, a thumb's width apart, a constellation she intends to realign later. "Go home," Mark adds, softer. "Sleep." She doesn't say that sleep is the one room Lily never returned to. She tucks the Polaroid into a stiff sleeve, pockets the note. Outside, the rain eases to a whisper. Her building greets her with a hiss of radiator heat she pays extra for in months it misbehaves. She keys the door, steps into the dim, and every object is right where she left it, because she trained them that way. On the kitchen shelf, the jar waits. Spare batteries, a tangle of camera strap, a single candy bead she never threw away. She lifts the lid and drops tonight's 2 beside it. 3 small circles look up like a code you could crack if you had the key. She closes the jar and sets it back, unsteady for the first time all day. Something white hangs from the peephole on her apartment door. tucked, not taped. The hallway is empty, carpet dark with rain prints that don't match her shoes. She slides the note free with 2 fingers. It is a photo, not a note. It shows a rural mailbox with the number 16 barely legible and a sticker faded to the ghost of Harper. In the corner, a thumb she knows. The scar across the knuckle is hers, from a hot tray at a diner job, 1994. The picture is hers. She never took it. Her phone rings once, landline, not cell, and stops. She holds the photo until the corners soften under her grip. Then, a quiet, not quite knock. Once, twice, 3 times. From her side of the door, Claire hears the soft plastic tap of something touching wood, the sound a cheap mask makes when someone raises it to listen. Claire steps back from the peephole and photographs the wood grain, the tiny nicks where keys missed, the dark oval left by breath. The white tap-tap stops. The hallway returns to radiator hiss and distant television laughter. She waits the length of a song, then another, then a silence where a song should be, then calls Mark. "Don't move it," he says. "Don't touch anything." "I didn't," she answers, hands raised to prove it to a room that believes rules when it sees them. In the morning, the annex conference room smells like dry coffee and wet coats. The captain listens without interrupting, which is new enough to count as hope. Chain of custody forms multiply. The orange thread, the tiara hair, the button backing with the L, the TriMet transfer, the candy beads, the Polaroids, the envelope with "You're late, Claire." Every item is bagged and initialed, each tag a small promise that the past will be handled as if it were living. "DNA?" the captain asks. "Hair is likely shaft without root," Mark says. "Best case, mitochondrial analysis for maternal line. We can at least see if it's consistent with family." Claire nods, professional first, sister after. "We can do fiber comparison on the orange thread against the ribbon in the old evidence sleeve. Microscopy, dye matching. If we still have the original properly stored." "We do," the captain says. "Surprisingly." He turns to Claire. "And the photo you found at your apartment?" She lays it beside the loose print from the hall box. 2 rural mailboxes, same sticker ghost. Harper, 1 number readable, 16. Hers shows the corner of a thumb in frame. The scar across the knuckle is a white comet only she could name. "This is my scar," she says, not a claim, a fact. "I've never been to this mailbox." "You sure?" the captain asks gently. "I would remember the way the road crowns," Claire says, pointing to the shallow rise, the ditch dark with water. "The way the sticker peeled only from the right, and if I'd shot it, I would have corrected this left tilt." Mark studies the Polaroid, the foil cartridge, the note. "Someone had your camera once," he says, or got a print from someone who did. "My father borrowed my SX-70 after Halloween," Claire says, the sentence coming from somewhere she didn't plan. "He said he wanted to copy yearbook photos for flyers. I never asked for it back. He gave it to me years later at Christmas. We didn't talk about what was still inside." The captain lifts an eyebrow at Mark. "Interview the parents. Formal? Respectful?" Mark nods. "And Harper?" "Start with paperwork," Claire says. "They rented risers to the hall, contracts, delivery logs, city permits. If their truck was there that night, the company invoiced someone." The day divides, Mark to the Morrisons, Claire to the city archives, the place old paper goes to keep telling the truth. Fluorescents hum. She threads a microfiche of business licenses, finds Harper Timber and Stagecoach office address, near the river, contact Walter Greeley. She writes the number and dials. The line rings into a machine that declares the number discontinued. She asks for a telecom supervisor and gets transferred twice until a patient voice says, "The thing old cases rest on. There's a forwarding for final bills." She writes a new number and tries again. "Greeley?" a man answers through the gravel of a smoker, who quit 10 years ago and wants credit for each year. When Claire explains, he exhales memory. I'm retired? Company folded in '90s after the floods, but yeah, we did the harvest hops, rented risers, hauled pumpkins stupid distances, drank your weak coffee. Was your truck at the Selwood Hall Halloween '83? Claire asks. Probably was. We had a 3-man crew, me, a kid named Ronnie who thought everything heavy was a dare, and a driver we used when we needed clean paperwork on the invoice. You know, someone with a business license that made the city stop asking questions. Name? Claire says. Lawrence Harper, Greeley says. No relation to the old owner, he liked hiring names that matched the sign. Had a yard outside Oaks Bottom, kept a trailer at a rural lot when the river swelled. Address had a 16 in it. The mailbox said 16-something Claiborne Road. Or Clay something. Been 20 years. Things blur. The number on the mailbox hisses in Claire's ear. She asks for directions the way people did before maps lived in pockets. Greeley gives landmarks. A sagging barn with a green roof, a stump carved into a bear, a sign that once said honey, but lost the H in wind. You'll know it by how the road lifts and then drops you like a shrug, he says. Claire thanks him and hangs up into the hum of a building that believes in records more than stories. She calls Mark. Your interview? She asks. Thomas was polite, like a badge is a shirt you never take off, Mark says. He says he borrowed your camera for flyers and returned it empty. Lydia made tea and forgot to pour it. They both say Lily was last seen at the Punch Bowl. Thomas says he questioned every vendor, including Harper. No notes in the file about Harper. He says he kept them separately. In a binder. A pause. He could not find the binder. Claire looks at the Polaroid her peephole wore like a dare. I'm going to the address Greeley gave, she says. I'll meet you there, Mark says. She drives the way you drive toward a decade you haven't met, steady, unsure what speed grief requires. Past Oaks Bottom, the trees crowd the road until sky is optional. The rain takes a breath. Land sags into ditch, rises to crown, drops. She counts street numbers like beads until the mailbox appears. 16, the last digit abraded into gray. Harper's sticker is now a fossil of glue. Gravel grinds under her tires. The lot is wider than it looks from the road. An apron of mud, a rectangle of old foundation, blackberry canes with ambitions. A chain sags across what used to be a drive. A private property sign gives up the fight in flaked red. Claire photographs the chain links, the post wear, the angle of sag. On the far edge of the lot, a concrete pad sleeps half buried, a rectangle that once held a temporary building, the kind you can tow away and pretend it never had an address. Mark pulls in behind her. His headlights brush the thicket, wake a shape that is not a deer, just tarp belly over something that lost its name. Old trailer tie-downs, Claire says, kneeling by the pad's corners. 4 bolts, rusted to confession. Could have been Harper's temporary office, Mark says. Could have been anybody's. Let's make it ours, Claire says, and starts a perimeter. They grid the lot. Tire ruts turn to low troughs, a seam in the mud where a pair of wheels sat long enough to teach the ground a habit, a scatter of staples with rust halos. At the pad's edge, a cigarette tin lies mashed flat. She pries it up. Inside, against luck, a paper survives because someone loved it enough to fold twice and tuck small. She teases it open with a palette knife. It is an invoice carbon sheet, Harper, Timber, and Stage Co. A rental of risers and delivery bill to Selwood Community Hall, contact T. Morrison. Date, NOV 1, 1983. In the memo line, in handwriting that didn't expect a future, one word, returned. Thomas signed this, Mark says quietly. She photographs the sheet from every angle, then sleeves it before the ink remembers rain. Across the lot, a rectangle of ground lies stubbornly clean, as if an object once kept weather off it and left only the outline. Claire kneels and brushes with gloved fingers. The dirt gives a small plastic oval the size of a coin. She lifts it. It is not a coin. It is a mask ribbon end cap, the little rubber piece that covers wire tips so they don't scratch paint. They cap the wire under the awning, she says. Same cap, same habit. Same person, Mark says. Beyond the lot, the road hums with tires and a far-off diesel cough. From deeper in the property line, something vertical interrupts the bramble. Weathered posts with insulators like white teacups. Old utility run. Claire follows it to the tree line where a single-room shed crouches like a secret that learned posture. The door is boarded with care, not thrown, screws, not nails. A padlock that's newer than the wood. Mark calls it in for a property owner check. While they wait, they listen. Wind. A cow somewhere making the sound cows make when time slumps. A train miles away deciding nothing. Claire presses her ear to the board because childhood taught her that doors have pulse. The wood gives back the faintest arrhythmic tremor like something mechanical turning at a rate that mocks heartbeats. The county records clerk returns with a name that is not Harper. Properties held by Claiborne Services, LLC, she says. Mailing address is a P.O. Box. Registered agent is Thomas Morrison. The silence between Claire and Mark does a thing only two people with the same memory can hear. It drops a floor out of the house. Mark swallows like it's a duty. We get a warrant, he says. We get one fast, Claire says. Back in the city, the captain's eyebrows climb and then flatten into the practiced angle of paperwork that has to outrun weather. The judge signs because the judge remembers 1983 and has buried a daughter of their own under the weight of what-ifs. By dusk, they return with bolt cutters and a uniform to witness. The padlock falls open like something relieved to retire. The board comes down, careful, screws pocketed because habit builds trust in future trials. The door grinds. The smell is particular. Closed wood, mouse paper, the chemical hush of dehumidifiers. The tremor resolves into sound, a fan timed wrong. Claire's beam crosses shelves of boxes with numbers, not names, a cot that's been slept on by time not bodies, a metal desk with clean rings where something bottled stood. On the desk, a power strip hums to itself. A lone appliance sits plugged in, an air purifier with a blue light that makes the dust look like snow. In the corner, a dress bag, not yellowed, newer. Clear plastic crinkles when she touches it with a gloved knuckle. Inside hangs a white mask, not cheap party plastic, but molded theater stock, blank and heavier, the left cheek marked by a shallow scratch someone traced with a fingernail until it learned depth. A ribbon is tied through its holes, left over right, right over left, neat as a school bow. Claire photographs the mask, the bag seam, the hanger brand, the dust prints on the shelf slat where something identical sat not long ago. Beneath the slat on the floor, a single candy bead winks dumbly up. Again, Mark says. Again, she answers. They pull a file box labeled numbers and find ledgers, neat columns of dates without labels, amounts without purpose. At the back, beneath the false bottom, someone thought would keep a secret polite. A cashier's check receipt curls. Payee blank. Remitter. T. Morrison. Date NOV 22, 1983. Amount. Enough to rent silence. Claire does not take a breath bigger than the room allows. From outside, tires sigh on gravel. Not their cars, not the uniforms. Another. Lights sweep the far trees and break into the shed through plank seams as pale stripes. A door closes. A second. Voices murmur where you can't hear words. Only intention. Mark clicks his radio twice in the code that means ready. The uniform shifts their weight. Claire's camera whirs softly to readiness because it learned her pulse long ago. Footsteps crunch toward the door. The footsteps stop just outside the threshold, framed by the slit of light where the door doesn't quite kiss the jamb. Claire's hand finds the edge of the desk. Mark lifts a palm. Wait. The uniform clears their throat just enough to exist. A key scrapes metal. The lock they already cut turns anyway, a ghost habit from a person who's done this door a long time. The handle dips. The door inches. Mark says, calm like someone holding a cup too full. Police. Announce yourself. Silence answers. Then a voice, low and softened by decades of giving orders that are now favors. It's me. Thomas Morrison steps into the spill of flashlight like a photograph walking forward. He's older than memory but built from the same lines. The set of jaw that decided work was a language. The coat he still hangs on a single nail by the door at home. The eyes that learned to scan edges and forgot how to rest. He stops when he sees Mark, then Claire, then the uniform, then the box open to ledgers with his name sleeping under a false bottom. What is this place, Thomas? Mark asks. Thomas looks at the mask in the bag as if it might answer before he does. "Was a storage shed," he says. "For what?" Claire asks, and hears her voice split into two girls. "For things nobody knew where to put," he says, which is not a lie if you sand its corners. He steps closer, and the uniform steps too. He raises both hands, not to surrender, but to establish the choreography of courtesy. "I told you not to reopen it," he says to Mark. "And we didn't," Mark replies. "It reopened itself." Thomas's eyes flick to Claire's camera. "You always did make pictures of things that didn't want to be remembered," he says, and the sentence lands with the weight of pride, twisted into the knot of use. "We found an invoice with your name," Claire says, "a check receipt, a property LLC with your signature." "Someone had to keep order," he says. "Your mother couldn't breathe." The department was a room with its chairs kicked over. "Did you rent this place?" Mark asks. "I paid bills so it wouldn't rot into the creek," he says. "It held files for cases the Bureau forgot." His face doesn't move to accommodate the lie's furniture. "I kept things safe." "Like what?" Claire asks. He looks toward the back as if the room will help, then away as if the room won't. "Chairs," he says, "costumes, old VCRs, things that reminded people of the wrong night." "What about people?" Claire asks, the word refusing to be plural. He doesn't answer. The uniform shifts their stance. The fan ticks, falls out of rhythm, catches itself like heart remembering its job. Mark inhales. "We'll be taking everything," he says, "with warrants." Thomas nods once. Slow, the way a man nods when a thing he built finally believes it can stand without him. Outside, dusk deepens. The lot holds the echo of a flatbed truck that isn't there. A coyote barks laughter in the distance. The sky goes the color of a bruise, and then becomes the bruise. Claire seals the mask, the ledgers, the bead. She seals her hands in new gloves because sometimes that's the only prayer she's learned that works. By morning, lab forms have multiplied again. The hair goes to mitochondrial analysis with buccal swabs from Lydia and Claire. The thread goes to the fiber lab. The ledger images go to a financial crimes analyst who likes puzzles more than money. Claire scans the Polaroids at high resolution, mapping chemical mottling like constellations, looking for repeats that mean duplication, cut and paste, a counterfeit memory. She orders city plats for Claiborne and surrounding. 16-something resolves into two candidates, 16407 and 16112. Both once had portable structures. One now shows a renewed business license, St. Bridget's Restoration Trust, mail to a downtown P.O. box, property use, long-term recovery storage. The other shows a short burst of utilities payment in 1983-1985, and then a long sleep. "St. Bridget's," Mark says when she shows him. "That orphanage in North Carolina." "Different St. Bridget's," Claire says. "Common name. But somebody knows it sounds like a place you don't ask about." They follow paper where it still breathes, tax stamps, permit applications, a handwritten request for a temporary ramp for limited mobility clients. The request lists a coordinator, R. Turner. "Rachel," Claire says, She worked the hop sign-in table that night. They find her at the antiquarian shop that smells like furniture learned to read. Rachel wears the same ring she did at 17, thin band, opal clouding like a weather report you learn to ignore. She recognizes Claire and makes the face people make when a calendar tears to the same month. "Why is my name in this?" Rachel asks after they show her the ramp request. "You tell us," Mark says. "I filed permit forms for whoever rented the hall," she says. "Volunteers do the boring things. A woman asked if I could help with a ramp for a temporary outreach trailer by the river. She said it was about recovery programs after the floods. This was months after. February '84. I didn't ask more because I thought being useful meant not needing reasons." "What woman?" Claire asks. Rachel considers her own memory like a fragile plate. Short hair, quiet, church lady coat without the church. She wore a name badge, but the font was free. I couldn't read it. She smelled like hand sanitizer when that wasn't yet a smell. She looks at Claire's hands. She held a Polaroid and asked if I knew where it was. A mailbox with a sticker. Claire feels her thumb itch where the scar sleeps. "Did she say who sent her?" "She said the police," Rachel says. But she didn't have the posture. She had the posture of someone who tidies other people's errors. "What did you tell her?" Mark asks. "I told her that mailbox was out near the old Harper lot, and that whoever used that trailer didn't like visitors." Rachel swallows. "I thought it was a food bank. I never told you because I didn't know it was something else." On the way out, Rachel stops Claire with a hand on a sleeve. "I still dream in orange lights and plastic masks," she says. "I still wake up thinking, I forgot to count the sign-in cards." Claire nods because some absolutions have to be performed without words. Back at the annex, the fiber report arrives first. The orange thread from the side door sill shares dye composition and weave with the ribbon from evidence. Not a match to the molecule. 22 years punish precision, but consistent. The hair comes slower. Insufficient nuclear DNA. Mitochondrial profile consistent with maternal line. Probative for a family tree, not a courtroom. Enough to turn air into a shape you can breathe. Financial Crimes adds a post-it to the ledgers. 4 sets of cashier's checks drawn from the same branch, purchased by Thomas, remitter line sometimes blank, amounts aligned with monthly rent in industrial storage, and a care contract in an unnamed facility. The facility deposit name is truncated by a dot matrix printer that couldn't believe it would live this long. Sake, BR. Then teeth of ink. "St. Bridget's," Mark says again. "Saint." "Bridget's home," Claire says, searching with her finger, not the web. There's a private clinic that used that name as a shell for a while in county records. Short-term recovery and stabilization. Address tracks to a road out past the Claiborne lots. It's supposed to be closed. They drive the road again after dark by design. Some places are honest only in evening. The shoulder crumbles into ditch like pastry. An old gate blocks a gravel lane. A new camera on a pole watches nothing with enthusiasm. A small sign tries not to be read. Bridget Home Services. Authorized entry only by appointment. No phone number, just authority. Mark kills the lights, and they sit long enough to make neighbors nervous if there were neighbors. The rain has thinned to thread. The dark holds itself like a secret waiting to be chosen. Claire counts to 100. At 93, a rectangle of light switches on inside the trees, half a football field down the lane. Not a flood, a window. A person's silhouette passes frontally, then profile, then turns, so that the head becomes an oval that flattens into white. "Mask," Claire says, not loud, not soft, exactly the volume a fact demands. They approach on foot, flashlights angled low so Mud decides not to tell. The gate latch is a loop of wire tied left over right, right over left. She photographs the knot. The lane smells of wet cedar and the solvent of new paint. A combination that says someone tried to make old wood a different story, and almost succeeded. The building is a double-wide stitched into permanence with skirting and optimism. At one end, a ramp like the one on Rachel's permit climbs to a door that pretends it's a house door. The window with the light shows a tidy room, a table with puzzles. A television paused on a local weather map. On the wall, a corkboard, family visits, Saturdays. The marker ink has eaten its way into the fiberboard. Nobody erased dates. They faded. Mark taps the door with knuckles trained to sound official and not predatory. Into the fiberboard. Nobody erased dates. They faded. Mark taps the door with knuckles trained to sound official and not predatory. After a moment, a bolt slides on the other side. A woman opens halfway. Her face is the kind you trust at first and catalog later, mid-50s, hair clipped for work, a cardigan that chooses no color. She looks from badge to camera to mud on their shoes, then back to badge, as if hierarchy could be solved by repetition. "Bridget home?" Mark asks. "We're closed," she says. "Name?" he asks. "Marion," she says. Not an answer to his question if you need last names to breathe, but more than closed. "We're looking for someone who might be under your care," Mark says. "Everyone here is under someone's care," she says, choosing words like squares on a floor she trusts. "But we are closed. We have a warrant for your client list from 1983 to 1985, Mark says, offering paper drawn up as if they might reach this door. "And for this property." She accepts the paper with the hands of someone taught that paper is a door you open even when you don't want to. Her eyes move under lines. Her jaw moves too, a slow calculation not of law, but of what her sleep will cost in either decision. She opens the door wider and says, "You can wait in the office." Claire steps inside and recognizes the smell, bleach plus oatmeal, the scent of clean plus consolation. The office holds 2 file cabinets, locked, a desk with a calendar turned to months ago, a printer that waits like a dog. On the wall, a photo of a younger Marion with a group of women in nurse whites not licensed to be called nurses. "Who funds you?" Mark asks. "Private donors," Marion says. "Church groups, families who prefer privacy. We had county contracts once." Her eyes flick to the window like she asked them to be there but didn't send stamps. Claire studies the corkboard photos, cropped faces with smiles like the sun is an assignment. A half face catches her, cheek with a crescent freckle, hair pulled back, ribbon orange like tea. The eyes are off frame, the mouth is not. The mouth is familiar. It knows where the light is and how to keep it. "Her name?" Claire asks, fingertip near but not touching the glass. "She doesn't use one," Marion says. "Does she wear a mask?" Claire asks. "In bright light," Marion says. She says it helps. "Who brought her here?" Mark asks. "No one brings anyone," Marion says too quickly. Then, slower, "Families bring. Donors make sure we can keep. A long time ago, a man with a badge on his wallet but not on his shirt made arrangements. He gave no name. He wrote checks that arrived on Thursdays." Claire breathes once, decides to make air a letter. "Lily," she says. Marion looks at the warrant like it might offer another noun. "I call her—" She stops. "I call her the lady in the window. She comes to the glass when it rains." "Now?" Claire asks. "She's in her room," Marion says. "She doesn't like visitors." Then, almost a whisper, "She keeps a crown on the table. She likes to arrange the gems back the way she remembers." "Please," Claire says, and does not know which rules she just broke. Marion chooses not to know them either. She leads them down a hallway that tries to be pleasant and fails only at forgetting. The third door is painted the color waiting rooms pick, blue that believes in weather. Marion knocks once, twice, 3. "It's me," she says, and waits until whoever needs to make the decision has made it. The bolt slides. The door opens the width of a mask. The room is spare, a raincoat on a hook, a table with a crown whose prongs have been bent back to yes, a radio that remembers a synth line and plays it when the dial is between stations. At the window, the curtain lifts in a draft. then lowers like a breath pulled back into a chest. A woman stands just out of the light. Her hair is pulled back with an orange ribbon that has turned to tea. The mask covers her face. Left cheek, a scratch, shallow. Her hands are at her sides, fingers curved as if they once memorized steps. Claire's camera lowers because some moments refuse paper first. "Lily," she says again, not a question, not a claim. "Exactly the volume of childhood says I'm still here?" The woman tilts her head the way the mask in the video did when it recognized a door. Then she lifts one hand and taps the mask twice with a single knuckle, soft plastic on bone, tap, tap. Marion whispers, "She does that when she's listening." The woman reaches to the table and touches the crown, then the candy bracelet, beads lined in a small row, as if they're ours she chose to keep. She steps forward into the window light and stops there, not yet into names, not yet into the room where years meet. Through the eye holes the irises glitter like glass in rain. Behind them, at the office desk, a phone begins to ring, long, patient. The sound walks the hallway as if it remembers roots. Marion looks back at them, then at the woman. "Do you want me to—" The woman in the mask turns her head toward the ringing as if it belongs to a drill she has learned but refused. Then she lifts her hand again and with 2 fingers traces a half-moon over her ribs where a scar might hide under cotton. Claire's hand finds the half of a broken locket at her own throat. The phone keeps ringing, then it stops. A second later, somewhere deeper in the building, a door unlatches. The latch sound moves the air like a hand under water. Marion turns toward the corridor. Mark's palm floats to that middle height between calm and command. Claire doesn't move. She is listening the way a photograph listens, by holding still long enough for truth to enter the frame. Footsteps approach, measured, not stealth. A man clears his throat the way he used to before calling the family to dinner. Thomas Morrison appears in the doorway as if the hallway had been a dark room, and the room just developed him. His hair is thinner, his shoulders the same square that taught hangers to behave. He doesn't look at Mark first or at Marion or at the warrant riding the desk like weather. He looks at the mask. "Lily," he says, and the name is not a question or a call. It is a habit that survived everything else. The masked woman's head tilts. The left cheek's shallow scratch catches window light and, for a second, looks like a healed thing on living skin. She lifts 2 fingers and taps the mask once. Tap, then again. Tap. Mark steps so the warrant is a visible boundary. "Thomas, this facility is under a judicial order. We're executing a search and client verification. You need to—" Thomas raises his empty hands, fingers open. Not to surrender, but to make proof of emptiness. "I won't get in the way," he says. "I only came because Marion called me last night. She said you were coming. She thought maybe I could help." "I didn't call," Marion says, startled, eyes cutting to Claire. Thomas doesn't blink. "Someone did," he says softly, and the room understands there are always phones that exist only to ring once. Claire's voice is even because she has practiced even. "Dad, why is your name on an LLC that holds the Claiborne shed? Why does your check pay a facility that calls itself Bridget? Why is there a cashier's receipt dated November 22nd, 1983 in a box hidden under numbers?" He exhales through his nose, a sound that once meant lost nails and found solutions. "Because nobody else was going to do it right," he says. He glances at the mask again, and his jaw eases the smallest amount, like something heavy, remembered it could be set down without breaking. "Because she lived." The sentence is a door. Claire steps through it and into a year where that could be true. She keeps her voice on the safe side of hope. What happened at the hall? Thomas looks past all of them to 1983 because 2005 has not yet earned the front row. "The Harper truck wasn't supposed to load out until after the dance," he says. "They were behind. The driver brought the flatbed around the side door to stack risers. The camera dad insisted on kept catching my flank because I couldn't stop hovering. I saw Lily step to the door for air. A kid in a wolf suit shoved past. A ribbon caught on the latch. The door swung. She stumbled. The truck coasted a foot when it shouldn't have. The corner of the bed caught her at the ribs. She didn't fall under. She crumpled. She didn't scream. Marion's hand rises to her own ribs, in the same shape Lily traced with 2 fingers minutes before. Claire feels the half-locket at her throat, as if it's a small, live animal. I called it in, Thomas says. I had my radio. I swore the operator to keep it off the main. I swore the driver to stay put. I swore a lot of people a lot of things. In the supply room, I found the mask and tied it because she hated bright light since she was little. Remember? He glances at Claire. You used to pull the shade for her at breakfast. She said the world was too shiny. Mark's jaw flexes. Why no report? He asks, words choosing the hard floor. There was a report, Thomas says, in my notebook, which became a binder, which became a box that became somewhere else. He lifts his hand, lets it fall. Harper's outfit had outstanding contracts with the city. The driver was on a provisional license. The insurance. He stops the way men stop when the next word is a cost that will never be reimbursed. She was breathing, barely. They said she'd need quiet. They said the press would make a party out of her. They said people like stories more than truth. I made a decision. You hid her, Claire says. The syllables, not a trial, but a measurement. I kept her, Thomas answers. He tells it like inventory, the first private clinic. The neurologist who said the head strike rewired light and sound into knives, the days when Lily knew her name and the days when names were insults. The mask became a tool for light, then for privacy. The crown at her bedside arrived because someone remembered a costume and thought a story should match its props. The checks went out on Thursdays because schedules soothe. Why didn't you tell us? Lydia's question should be in the room, but isn't. Claire carries it. Why didn't you tell Mom? Why didn't you let me see her? Thomas looks at the floor, at the way water has made a darker map of the entry rug. Because you would have wanted the world, he says, and I was afraid the world would take the rest. Silence in the small office tastes like bleach and rain. Marion clears her throat. She has good days, she says softly. On good days she arranges the crown and the beads. On bad days she taps the mask and hums to find the seam of a song. Mark's posture shifts. The policeman returns. We need to document all of this, he says. Chain of care, medical records, the financial links. And Thomas, his voice lowers. The original investigation files you kept? Thomas nods once. They're in my garage, he says. Behind the freezer, in the chest, nobody opens because the lid slams on fingers. Claire doesn't move her eyes from Lily. Can I? She asks Marion, not finishing, because the last word is a cliff. Marion looks at Lily, not at the law. Only if she wants, she says. Lily turns her head the smallest arc and faces Claire. Through the eye holes, raindrop light makes tiny planets. Claire lifts both hands as if air is delicate. She takes one step and then another until she can smell the faint plastic of the mask and the faint shampoo that belongs to this room, not their childhood. She sets her voice in the place where you speak to animals and infants and past versions of yourself. Lily, it's Claire, she says. You're not late. I am. A sound leaves the mask that is not a word. It is the rustle a photograph makes when someone in it moves. Lily lifts her hand and touches Claire's sleeve, fingers checking fabric like memory checks seams. Then she taps the mask twice. Tap, tap. Behind them, Mark's phone vibrates a short, insistent buzz that belongs to the present. He glances down and frowns. Unknown number, he says, answering. Silence. Then a synth line, thin as thread. He puts it on speaker. The music fades and a recorded voice plays, his own from a tape long ago. Copy. I'll keep it off main. The line clicks. Dead. Claire looks at Mark, surprise folding into something with edges. You were on the radio that night. Mark's face acquires a decade in a heartbeat. I was a rookie assigned to crowd tone, he says. Your father told me to keep chatter off the air. He said it would protect her. I believed him. The past rearranges its furniture. Claire stares at the Polaroid on Marion's corkboard, the rural mailbox with Harper's sticker ghost, and the number 16. Then at Thomas's hands, steady, empty, used to holding explanations that don't fit pockets. Who took that mailbox photo with my camera? She asks. Thomas swallows. I did, he says, in case anyone ever questioned the driver's route. I meant to put it with the file. I forgot. Then I couldn't look. The twist tightens, then holds. This was not an abduction that craved a villain in a stranger's jacket. It was a collision between a truck and a moment, and a father's decision to hide a daughter from a story he knew his city would swallow. Then who has been knocking? Claire asks, hearing the basement door in her building, the annex desk phone, the tapping at the hall. Who set the mask under the awning? Who slid the envelope with "You're late, Claire"? Who left the beads? Marion looks at the hallway as if sound leaves traces. We have a volunteer, she says. She comes on Thursdays. She's the one who cuts the ribbons straight and ties bows, left over right, then right over left without thinking. She worked the hop sign-in table. She brings Polaroid film because our girls like to see themselves without screens. Rachel, Claire says. A second pair of footsteps enters the corridor. The office doorframe catches a shoulder that knows the corner. Rachel Turner appears, hair damp, cardigan darker at the cuffs from rain. She stops, sees Thomas, sees Mark, sees the mask, and grows very still. I called nobody, she says quietly to Marion, as if continuing a previous conversation. I just unlocked the door. Claire watches the way Rachel's eyes land on the crown, then the beads, then the ribbon, like a person checking a shrine. You knew, Claire says. Rachel's mouth trembles, but finds a shape anyway. I suspected, she says. A year after, a woman came for the ramp permit. She didn't say names. She smelled like hand sanitizer and coffee. She asked if I knew a mailbox with a sticker. I went looking. I found Bridget. I brought puzzles and bags of candy because it felt like a thing a person could do when she cannot unmake a night. Mark's voice is softer than his badge. Why didn't you tell Claire? Rachel looks at Claire the way old friends do at funerals, straight on, because the only way through is through. Because I didn't know if you wanted to find the truth or break it, she says, because I thought maybe you deserved to choose the door yourself. Claire's hands are steady because work built a brace inside her. Who's been leaving the notes? She asks. Rachel blinks rain out of her lashes. I left one, she admits. You're late, Claire. Not to shame you. To move you. I was afraid if your father told it, it would be all duty and none of her. Thomas's face shifts, then returns. Duty sits where apology should be. He nods at Rachel once. You did what I could not, he says. You invited my daughter to her own life. The room's air changes like weather when a front moves through. The mask's white becomes less moon, more face. Lily, Marion says softly, would you like the window open? Lily taps the mask once and then twice, then reaches for the crown and turns it so the missing gem faces the door like an open seat. Claire lifts her half-locket. It flashes a dull shine. If I give you this, she asks, will you keep it? Just for a while. We can try it the way we used to, left over right, right over left. Lily's fingers find the chain. They hesitate. They slip. On the desk, the facility phone rings again, 3 slow chimes like a ritual. Marion frowns. We never get calls at this hour, she says, reaching. Wait, Claire says. On the 3rd ring, the machine picks up. A voice plays, cracked by tape, old as a habit. Tell Claire I'm sorry. Tell her I couldn't choose both. It is Lydia's voice. Thomas closes his eyes. The message ends in a breath that knows where the kitchen phone sits. Marion moves to replay it. Thomas's hand hovers, then drops. Your mother knew, he says, and the simplicity of the words tilts the floor. Claire feels the world sharpen, then blur. When? She asks. 2 winters after, Thomas says, eyes on Lily because some confessions require a fixed point. I told her when Lily said, "Mom" to the nurse and not to either of us. I took Lydia here at night so the press wouldn't make a picture out of it. She stood where you're standing. Lily tapped the mask twice. Lydia said she would keep the house ready and the kettle on. We divided a marriage into 2 jobs. Mine was to pay and to keep quiet. Hers was to wait and to keep hoping. She waited where you could see her, and I waited where you couldn't. It was a bad division. We should have failed the same way. Mark steadies a legal pad against his thigh, his pen moving because a cop's hand cannot not write when the room finally speaks. We will need statements, he says, not as interruption but as promise. And we will need to talk about Harper. Thomas nods. The driver died 10 years ago, he says. Stroke. He sent a letter before, apologized without names. I kept it. He looks at Claire. It's in the chest. Rachel's voice is small, the size of someone who chose a side street for 22 years. I kept the sign-in cards from the hop, she says. I thought maybe one day someone would want to count. They're in my shop, under the register. Everything comes in, Mark says. Marion opens a file drawer with the key on a chain clipped to her belt. The folders are labeled by hand. Client Issue 1, Client 02. Inside Client 03 sit notes written in round nurse letters. Light sensitivity, mask recommended. Noise threshold low, speech variable, prefers gesture, objects that soothe, crown, ribbon, beads. Visitors, Thursday man, T, Thursday woman, R. Under immunizations and med changes, memory fragments triggered by music, ESP synth line from Youth Center tape. Claire touches the page with the back of a knuckle, as if fingerprints could bruise words. Thursday man, she says. You came when you said you were at poker, she adds to Thomas, without voice raiser, without rescue, only fact. He nods. I didn't know how to tell the truth without making it sound like an excuse, he says. He looks at Lily. I thought protecting you meant keeping the story away. I didn't understand stories are how you come back. The radio on the shelf between the puzzles and the fake plant hisses like a seashell. The dial isn't on a station. It's in that uncanny space where the world improvises songs. The synth line arrives like a well-trained ghost. Lily turns her head to it. She lifts both hands and signs a small shape in the air. 2 loops, one over the other. Claire recognizes it as the motion they made as kids for Together, a shorthand invented in bunk bed light. Marion whispers, she does that when she recognizes a pattern. Mark takes the record copies Marion offers, tucks them into evidence sleeves, labels everything like someone building a bridge out of clipboards. He looks to Thomas. We'll also need your consent to search your home tonight, he says, and the keys. Thomas takes his wallet out, not for money, but for a flat brass key that has learned his pocket's exact shape. He sets it on the desk beside the crown. The crown's missing gem well looks like a small mouth ready to say something, if given a syllable. Tell me about the second camera, Claire says suddenly. The copy tape. 4TM. Who shot that? Thomas swallows. I did, he says, and a volunteer named Marion's cousin. We rotated. I wanted more angles to see who Lily spoke to that night before she stepped outside. I told myself more eyes would mean more safety. It meant more guilt. Claire's eyes find the paused video on the office TV. Someone had slotted their HOPE 83 copy earlier and left the image holding a strand of streamers, a bright fake sky that Jim tried on for one night. In frame, the arm in the work jacket crosses again, that not quite touched just above the shoulder blade. Claire moves closer to the TV and leans in until the pixel blocks become squares of a tiled swimming pool. She looks not at the arm this time, but at the wrist. There is no watch. There is, however, a scrim of glitter, a crescent smear like what clings when you carry a crown. "Dad," she says, breath a hinge, "that's your arm." Silence accepts it without recoil. Thomas stares. He tips his head. He lets the idea land where it lands. "I put my arm out to steer her away from the door," he says, voice low. "I didn't touch. I wanted to." She had started back toward the punch bowl with that boy in the wolf suit. "I thought if I could just—" He stops. "I should have held her. I should have said her name in front of everyone." The twist finds its final thread. The arm that looked like threat or lure in freeze frame was a father's failed attempt to change the angle of a moment. "Then who shoved?" Mark asks. From the office door, a voice they had all forgotten belonged to anyone, but the building says, "I did." The custodian from the hall stands there, hat in his hands, like a child about to confess to breaking a glass. He is older than guilt, but younger than his eyes. "I wore the wolf head to move kids off the risers," he says. "I was supposed to keep them from climbing. I bumped her. I swear I didn't see the truck move. I swear." Mark steps between him and the history he's late to. "How did you get here?" he asks. "I followed the police car," the custodian says, as if that explains every trespass of his life. "I heard the phone ring on your desk. I thought, if I don't say it now, I'll never." Thomas looks at him a long time and then sets his hat back on the man's head in a gesture that has the exact shape of forgiveness and is not quite it. "You're not the reason," he says. "You're a piece. We all are." Claire turns back to Lily. The mask is still. The eye holes are dark moons. She thinks of the video, of a head tilting as if listening to a private song. She thinks of the orange ribbon dyed to tea. She thinks of the candy beads aligning 3 small planets on her kitchen shelf, and here on the table like coordinates. "Lily," she says, "can I show you something?" She takes out her half of the broken locket and, with Marion's small nod, steps closer. She lifts the chain and touches it to the mask's chin, as if telling a story in Braille. Lily's breath fogs the plastic a little, a soft, private weather. Claire slides the chain around the back of Lily's neck. The metal clicks against hairpins. "You used to say the mask made you brave," she says. "You said it turned the world into a stage light instead of noon." Lily's hands rise. For a second, Claire thinks she will tap the mask twice and refuse entry. Instead, Lily's fingers find the ties. Left over right, right over left. Muscle memory unwinds. The bow loosens the way a day finally does. The ribbon whiskers across plastic. The knot slumps. No one exhales because to exhale would be to choose which decade to be in. The mask lifts. The room rearranges itself around a face that has been training to be seen. The left cheek holds a shallow, pale line that mirror shadows the scratch in plastic. Her eyes are lighter than Claire expected, darker than she remembers, gray that learns its color from rain. At the corner of her mouth is a shape that isn't quite a smile, but knows where one goes. "Hi," Lily says, the syllable landing like the softest emergency. Claire's hands go to her own ribs because something inside needs bracing. "Hi," she answers. "You kept my half safe." Lily touches the locket, then traces the arc over her ribs again, an old, healed curve under cotton. "Truck," she says, small. "Door, Dad." Thomas swallows a decade of sentences and manages one. "I'm here," he says. The office phone rings again, that patient, institutional tone that learned how not to intrude and fails. Marion picks up because someone must. "Bridget home," she says. She listens, then holds the handset away, as if the voice inside it is a weather event. "It's for you," she says to Claire, surprised. "A woman." Claire takes the phone. The line is warm against her ear. "Hello?" Lydia's voice arrives like a summer room in winter. "You found her," she says, both happiness and apology braided so tight the sentence nearly can't stand. "I couldn't come. I would have broken the room." "Mom," Claire says, and the word makes her younger and older at once. "Tell her," Lydia says, "that I kept the lights on, the porch, every year." A breath. "Tell her I'm not mad that she wore the mask. I'm mad that I let the story wear me. Another breath. And tell your father he is allowed to stop being a policeman for 1 hour. Thomas looks at the floor. He nods at nothing. He nods at everything. Marion's printer coughs a page into the tray. It is the client verification form the county will need. It is the kind of paper that changes what other papers are allowed to say. Mark signs where the law has taught him to. Marion signs where care has taught her to. Thomas signs because he no longer wants to live in a hallway. Claire signs because the world must look like it has a plan. Last thing, Claire says, turning to Thomas, why the mailbox photo in my peephole? Why now? Thomas frowns, then shakes his head. Not me, he says. I never went to your building. I would have rung. I'm old-fashioned. Rachel raises her hand like a student admitting to daylight. Me, she says. I wanted you to know where the road begins, not the shed, not the mask, the road. Why the words? Claire asks. You're late, Claire? Rachel's face moves through shame into something like relief. Because you weren't, she says. Because I needed you to argue with me before you argued with him. Lily stands very still. She touches the crown's missing gem seat with one finger, then looks at Claire. Home, she says. Then, more carefully, as if testing which muscles cooperate now. Night. Thomas answers before his badge can. If Marion says it's safe, he says. Marion checks the chart, the hour, her own calendar of storms. Trial visit, she says. We send a nurse. We keep the mask by the door. We keep the ribbon for light. The room exhales. Even the radio seems to find a frequency long enough to stop being a ghost. Outside, rain de-escalates to mist. The ramp will be slick. The car will smell like old upholstery and the present. Mark's phone buzzes once more. A text from the captain. Bring Thomas. Bring files. Bring the truth. We'll go by your house, then the annex, Mark says without steel. Then home, Claire says, looking at Lily. Lily nods. They move, a choreography of coats and evidence sleeves and the odd sacred item you carry in your hands because pockets feel profane. At the threshold, Lily hesitates. Claire lifts the mask and offers it not as a hiding place but as sunglasses. Lily takes it and doesn't put it on. She threads the ribbon through her fingers like a rosary. On the porch, the night smells like cedar and apology. The gravel grip under shoes is the same whether you are leaving or returning. Halfway to the car, headlights rake the lane, too fast for a neighbor, too deliberate for the random. A vehicle blocks their path, dark, low, familiar, in a way that makes Claire's skin learn Braille. The passenger door opens. A woman steps out with a hood up and rain diamonds pinned to the hem. She lifts her face into the porch light. It's Lydia. She is not crying. She is not angry. She is wearing the other half of the broken locket. Before we go anywhere, she says, voice steady as a kitchen table, we do this as a family. She looks at Thomas, at Claire, at Lily, at the crown in Lily's hand, at the ribbon like tea in her fingers. Then she looks past them at the road that begins at a mailbox with a faded sticker and the number 16 in the corner of a photograph Claire never took. Are you ready? Lydia asks Lily. Lily taps the mask twice. Tap, tap. The nurse rides in the back beside Lily, hands folded on a tote that smells faintly of rubbing alcohol and oatmeal soap. Lydia drives, not because anyone asked her to, but because the car is a room she knows how to steer when conversations need walls. Thomas sits passenger, knees apart the way men brace in storms, fingers worrying the brass key he surrendered earlier and somehow still holds like a worry stone. Claire is in the trailing sedan with Mark, who gives distance the way a good cop does, enough space to keep a story from scraping its paint. Selwood at night is a museum of modest lights, porch bulbs halo damp, wind chimes clack like small bones telling weather. When Lydia turns onto their street, the house is exactly as Claire left it years ago and 5 minutes ago. Porch lamp on, thin curtain drawn, pumpkin on the step that never learned to sag, because Lydia replaces it the moment it thinks of giving up. Inside, the air is cinnamon tea and starch. It is also the quiet of a place that trained itself to be good at waiting. Lydia leaves the door open for Rain to speak. 10 minutes, the nurse says, gentle but clear. Then we decide together. She lays out objects on the coffee table like a ritual, mask folded on a towel, ribbon coiled like a question mark, a small timer, the crown with its missing gem seat, a travel inhaler, a laminated card with 3 printed drawings: house, window, sleep. Lily pauses on the threshold, eyes traveling the room as if reading a language that once used these letters. The piano in the corner wears a runner and the dust letters of old sheet music. The mantel holds 2 photos, sparklers in dusk, 2 girls on a porch under string lights, a 3rd frame turned face down years ago because sometimes love improvises rules to survive. Lydia turns it up. Lily's breath shortens. Fast, shallow. The nurse lifts a hand. May I? She places 2 fingers on Lily's wrist and nods. We'll give her light the way she likes it, Lydia says, crossing to the lamp and putting a scarf over the shade, as if modesty were a science. The room warms. Lily's shoulders drop the width of a breath. She looks at the window. Do you want it open? Lydia asks. Lily taps twice on the mask and the towel, a new grammar that somehow everybody understands. Claire cracks the window. Rain Thread enters. Street sound dips an oar into the room and backs out. Thomas stands and does not know where to place his hands. Lydia solves it with emotion, learned before either of them had gray hair. Sit, she says. He does. She sits next to him, knees touching, and for a moment they look like the rumor of a marriage that never split its chores into silence. We divided wrong, Lydia says without turning. I kept the front door, you kept the back. A beat. Tonight we keep both. Lily steps to the coffee table and touches the crown. She aligns the prongs, then the candy beads, 3 from Claire's jar and 2 from the facility, into a small crescent. She reaches for the locket at her chest, turns the half-moon between thumb and forefinger, then looks at Claire. Do you remember the game? Claire asks. We used to hide the halves around the house, and the clue was the sound. She taps the piano bench. Lily tilts her head like a dog, catching a frequency. Claire lifts the bench lid gently. 1/2 of an old ribbon lies inside, sun-bleached to tea. Lily touches it, then presses it to her cheek like cloth can be in a dress. Mark clears his throat from the doorway and retreats 2 steps, making himself smaller than his badge. I'll be outside, he says to nobody in particular, and to everyone at once. Take the hour. They don't talk at first. They do the choreography of a family remembering how to be a body. Tea poured. An Afghan unfolded, the nurse checking the timer and nodding once when Lily's heart rate finds a slope instead of a cliff. Lydia brings a white plate with saltines and slices of apple, like a peace offering from a kitchen. Claire sits cross-legged on the rug, the way she did when algebra was a mountain, and Lily would drum pencils and sing answers that sounded like lyrics. I kept your room, Lydia says finally, eyes on the crown because eye contact can bruise. I washed the sheets every week at first, then every month. When I couldn't, I sprayed the pillow with the orange bottle. I told God and the air and your father that I would keep the light on. I was very holy about light bulbs for a while. She half laughs, the sound a little broken, a little brave. I am sorry I didn't tell you sooner, Claire. I'm sorry I let hope be a secret. We thought we were sparing you the story. We were only delaying its cost. Claire's mouth opens, closes. When it opens again, the words come like someone stepping onto a dock that might be rotted, might be sound. I took pictures of strangers, she says, because every face I focused spared me yours. I carried a jar with 1 bead because I needed proof that something small could wait 22 years and still fit the string. Thomas rubs his forehead as if erasing a chalk mistake. I thought I could pay my way out of guilt, he says. Turns out the currency is talking. I didn't have any. He looks at Lily. I tried to tie the ribbon right, left over right, right over left. Your mother used to correct my shoes. I practiced. He laughs once, then halts. I practiced, he repeats, and the repetition is confession, not defense. Lily steps to him, and for a split second Claire sees the 1983 Lily stage light reflected in varnish, orange ribbon under hair, the confidence of a girl who could hold a gym with a head tilt. Then 2005 overlays her like weather. Lily reaches, takes Thomas's hand, and puts it palm up. She lays the ribbon across, left over right, right over left, ties it like a rehearsal. He lets out a sound that never learned to be a man sound or a child sound. It is simply the body, when a thing you thought was lost asks to be held. The nurse checks the watch and the world. 5 more minutes, she says softly, then we'll decide. Decide what? Claire asks, though she knows. Whether tonight is an echo or a beginning, the nurse says. A siren far away smears across the neighborhood and slides off. Rain turns from thread to mist. The house settles, that old wooden shrug after a day's shoulders lower. Lily walks to the window and, with 2 fingers, draws a half moon on the condensation. She draws another next to it, together. Then she looks at Claire and, deliberate, slow, removes the mask from the towel and sets it on the sill facing out, like a lighthouse turned inland. "May I play something?" Claire asks, hand hovering over the piano keys. "Soft," the nurse says, smiling without teeth. Claire finds the 2-note synth motif on a piano that hasn't been tuned in patient years. She presses it like she's apologizing to the felt. The room listens. Lily lowers to the rug beside Claire and leans her shoulder so their bones agree on a boundary. In the doorway, Mark's silhouette reappears, then withdraws again, as if he's checked the perimeter of a dream and decided to leave it unlocked. The timer blinks. The nurse kneels. 1 more minute, she says, and then we decide together. She shows the laminated card. House, window, sleep. Lily's finger taps house, then sleep, then she looks to Lydia. Here, Lydia says, voice steady on a new road. Tonight, here. The nurse nods. Trial overnight, she says. I'll stay until midnight. We'll keep sensory load low. Mask nearby. If anything spikes, we go back. She looks to Thomas and Claire for permission that has already been given by everything in the room. Thomas rises and goes down the hallway. They hear a closet door sigh. He returns with a quilt that knows them all by name. Lydia smooths it. Claire lifts the crown from the table and places it on the piano. The missing gem seat turned toward the hallway like a porch light. The hour ends. The nurse writes a note on a form that will one day sit in a file marked with a number, not a name. Trial home visit stable, family attentive, client accepted environment, used familiar gestures, mask present but not needed. The house breathes. From the porch 3 slow knocks travel through wood. Once, twice, 3. The same pattern. The sound is softer, respectful, like someone who has learned the volume of this street. Lydia wipes her hands on her jeans and looks at the nurse, who tips her head. Your house. Thomas goes to the door and stops, remembering all the versions of himself who would have opened with a question and a badge. He breathes. He opens. On the step, Rachel, hair no longer wet, holding a paper bag with handles and the posture of a person who has auditioned for this moment in a mirror. I brought puzzles, she says, and those jelly fruit slices she used to like, they still make them. They taste like memory pretending to be citrus. She looks at Lily, then at Lydia. If this is the wrong time, I can leave them on the chair. It's the right time, Lydia says, surprising herself with how quickly the sentence found her. Come in or leave them. Either is love enough. Rachel steps in and stops just inside the mat, wiping her shoes automatically, reading the room like a score. Hi, Lily, she says softly. I'm Rachel, from the sign-in table. I got better at reading handwriting. Lily watches her hands more than her face. Rachel lifts the bag and produces the crown's missing gem, not the original, of course, but a cheap plastic cousin she found in a thrift bin and clipped to size. "I thought," she says, "maybe the crown could forgive itself." She offers it to Claire not to skip a channel. Claire takes it and places it in the empty seat. The click is nothing, a whisper of plastic surrendering to plastic, but it is also the sound of a thing deciding wholeness is a verb. Rachel sets a small Polaroid camera on the table, new film already breath-warm in her pocket. She looks to the nurse. The nurse nods. Rachel turns the camera to Lily and raises her eyebrows, asking without vocabulary. Lily taps the mask twice. Tap, tap, then nods once. Rachel shoots the room from the waist, no flash, letting the lamp's scarf and the window's breath do the lighting. They wait for the square to bloom. It does what photos do, confess, but slowly. The crown gleams, the bead crescent shines. The two sisters are shoulder to shoulder on a rug, older than one of them is allowed to be. Lydia covers her mouth. Thomas looks aside, and then doesn't. The nurse writes, "First family photo. Tolerated." "Keep it," Rachel says, handing the square to Lily. Lily presses it to her chest as if photographs can be blood-warm. Mark knocks his knuckles lightly against the jamb to exist again. "Thomas," he says, "I'll take you to the station for a formal statement, then back. We'll keep it quiet." He looks at Lydia. "We'll be gentle?" Lydia nods. "Be right," she says. "I can make peace with noise if it's honest." Thomas looks to Lily. "Do I go?" he asks, a man requesting leave from a job he didn't realize he was still doing. Lily takes his hand and places it on the brass key he still holds. She closes his fingers around it and pats twice, left over right, right over left, the joke of a bow. He nods. He kisses the top of the mask lying on the sill, because some devotions you honor even in retirement. He goes. The nurse settles Lily with pillows on the couch, the quilt tucked just so, the crown within reach. Lydia pulls a chair close, not hovering, not distant. She takes Claire's hand without breaking her gaze from Lily, a mother's multitask that never needed permission. "Tell me what I missed," she says. Claire smiles at the unfairness of the request and leans into it anyway. The microfilm clicks, the invoice in the cigarette tin, the Harper padlock, the way the fan in the shed lost the beat and found it again, the ledger that kept dates like prayers, the knot of the gate, left over right, right over left, as if a bow could diagnose. She leaves out none of the ugly because love without the unflattering truths is theater, and they have had enough masks. "Thank you," Lydia says when the story finds a chair, "for not narrating me as a failure." "You were a porch light," Claire says. "I was a basement." The nurse hides a smile behind the clipboard. "Both necessary," she says. On the rug, Lily makes a little road with the candy beads, 3, then 2, then a space, then 1. She taps each as if counting years. She taps the space and looks at Claire. Claire understands. "We'll fill that one," she says. "We'll find the bead that goes there." From the open window, a neighbor's radio lifts an old song into the room. The synth line is cousin to the gym tape, less tinny, more generous. Lily's chin tilts. She hums. The hum is not pretty and does not need to be. It is a sound that chooses this room. Rachel rises. "I'll go," she says. "I'll be back Saturday with glue that doesn't yellow and a puzzle with too much sky." She hesitates, then adds to Claire, "Thank you for not hating me." "I needed a nudge," Claire says. "You just gave it a name." After Rachel leaves, quiet returns, the kind that isn't empty, but full of breathing and dish clink and page flip. The nurse checks vitals and writes numbers that make sense. She points to the laminated card again, this time adding a small sticker star next to sleep. "We try?" she asks Lily. Lily taps twice. The ritual is already a language. They make the couch a bed. Lydia dims the lamp by half. Claire sits on the floor, back against the sofa, close enough for the quilt to touch her hair, when Lily turns. She takes the Polaroid and sets it on the piano beside the crown, next to a decades-old image of two girls with sparklers. The piano becomes an altar that refuses to be tragic. Footsteps on the porch boards, slow, deliberate, not Rachel, not Thomas. The nurse's eyes flick to the door. Mark is outside. Lydia's hand tightens on Claire's. Lily's hand finds the quilt edge and folds it between finger and thumb. A shadow occludes the glass for a heartbeat, a soft scuff. Then, under the door, a small envelope slips into the foyer light as neatly as a postcard. No knock this time, no dare. Just paper choosing floor. Claire rises and moves to it, the way she moves to a crime scene and to a lullaby. She kneels, photographs the envelope where it lies, the angle, the wet edge. She picks it up with 2 fingers. Inside, a single Polaroid. In the photo, the community hall trophy case reflects a white mask, and behind the glass, a second angled mask that is not a reflection. In the lower right corner, a hand holds a crown by its bent prongs. The camera tilt is familiar. Waist height, careful, no flash. On the back, in block letters, the same tidy hand that wrote, "You're late." Claire has written 4 words, "You're not done yet." Claire turns the photo toward Lydia and then toward the nurse. She sets it on the piano beside tonight's family square, as if challenge and proof belong next to each other. From the curb, Mark's voice, low, clipped, speaks to someone out of sight. Tires whisper. A door in the night closes and is answered by the soft tick of the living room clock that has minded time on their behalf for decades. Lily's eyes close. Her breathing lengthens, then dips, then steadies to the music of a house that has agreed to hold her. Lydia rests her head back and stares at the ceiling like it knows old hymns. Claire looks at the new Polaroid again and feels the foreshadowing click into its next position. Because if the family is home, someone else is still in the hall. The porch light flickers once, bulb almost loose or a wire wondering about its job. Claire stands and reaches for the lamp switch. Before her finger finds it, the phone on the end table rings exactly 3 times and stops. In the quiet that follows, the piano's topmost key pings by itself as the wood settles, high, clear, like a single star. Morning finds the house lighter than the weather forecast promised. The nurse has gone, leaving notes on the table in a handwriting that feels like reassurance made visible. Vitals steady. Emotional engagement positive. Trial deemed safe for continuation. Lydia reads the note once, folds it neatly, and sets it under a mug like a paper coaster for peace. Thomas hasn't returned yet. His statement will take hours, maybe days, to unwind from the bureaucracy that still believes truth is best told in forms with numbered fields. Claire wakes on the sofa. The quilt smells of detergent and the faint sweetness of dust warmed by morning. Lily sits cross-legged on the floor with the Polaroid camera, turning the new family photo in the light to make it change color, as if it's still deciding what time of day it wants to be. The house feels different now, not fixed, never that, but wider, as if the walls have learned another language overnight. Claire hears her mother humming in the kitchen, the same 3-note tune Lydia used when the girls were small. She follows the sound and finds her stirring oatmeal, slow circles, steam ghosts around her head like a halo borrowed from a painting. "Sleep?" Lydia asks. "Some," Claire answers. "Lily, too." "Good." Lydia smiles, the kind of smile that has both edges, the relief and the grief, married, not divorced. "I dreamed of the hall last night, only this time it ended before the song stopped." That's something. They eat together in a silence that's no longer heavy, just cautious, as if the air might bruise if they talk too loud. Through the window, the rain begins again, gentler now. On the sill, the white mask catches a drop and lets it slide down its cheek, like a tear that belongs to someone else. Claire looks at it and says, "Do we keep it?" Lydia follows her gaze. We don't bury tools, she says. We change what they're for. So they hang the mask on the wall near the door, not as a warning, but as a witness. Lily watches the ritual, her head tilted, her eyes curious. When they're done, she stands, walks over, and touches the ribbon. Left over right, right over left. It holds. By afternoon, Thomas returns. He smells of rain and paperwork. He doesn't speak until Lydia hands him a towel. They asked every question twice, he says finally. It's what we used to do, fair trade. Are you in trouble? Claire asks. He shakes his head. No. They decided the law already took its pound of time. He looks at Lily. I told them I kept her alive. That seemed to count. Lily steps forward. She taps his hand twice. Tap, tap. Then she does something new. She points to the door, then to the window, then to the Polaroid on the piano. Out, she says. Light. Claire blinks. You want to go outside? Lily nods once, deliberate. They gather coats, scarves, umbrellas that will do nothing. Outside, the neighborhood is slick and shining. Puddles mirror clouds. The air smells of wet leaves and late forgiveness. They walk to the end of the block where the mailbox still leans a little left. It's number 16, still visible if you squint. Lydia laughs. Looks familiar, she says. Lily touches the metal. It's cool, real. She presses her forehead against it for a second, then steps back and signs a small loop with her fingers, together. Claire mirrors it. Lydia copies clumsily, learning mid-gesture. Thomas watches, then joins, his big hands turning the sign into a shape more like prayer than vocabulary. For the first time in decades, they look like a family photo that doesn't need to be taken. A car slows at the corner. The driver, Rachel, rolls down the window and waves, not intruding, just witnessing. Saturday, she calls and keeps going. The rain stops exactly as if cued. Lily lifts her face to the gray sky and blinks until her lashes sparkle. Bright, she says quietly, the word not complaint this time, but a measurement. Claire squeezes her hand. You can wear the world now, she says, not hide from it. They walk back toward the house, four shadows lengthening into one. On the porch, the piano's high key chimes again from the open window. A tiny ghost sound of wood and temperature, or maybe something listening from the past and approving. Inside, the last Polaroid waits on the piano, the one that arrived in the envelope. You're not done yet. The ink has bled slightly where a raindrop kissed it. Claire picks it up. The crown's bent prongs, the masked reflection, the unseen photographer. It all sits there asking. She flips it over. Under the original message, in faint graphite now visible under the right light, a second line has appeared, as if written long before the rest. When the light is right, you'll see. That night, the rain doesn't return. The house hums with a kind of quiet that follows a confession, the hush of wounds closing, not hiding. Claire can't sleep. She moves through rooms by memory, touching the backs of chairs, the edge of the window frame, the photo frames whose glass has stopped trying to protect. In the living room, the mask on the wall gleams faintly in the streetlight. The scratch on its left cheek glints, a mirror of Lily's healed line. Claire steps closer and sees in that scratch the faint graphite reflection again, the hidden words from the Polaroid's back. When the light is right, you'll see. She turns the lampshade, changes the angle. For a heartbeat, the scratch catches the beam and throws it across the room, onto the piano, the crown, the beads, the locket halves. They line up like coordinates. She walks to the piano and finds, between the old music sheets, another photo she doesn't remember taking. The inside of the community hall, empty. Dust motes suspended in light. In the far corner of the photo stands a woman's shadow, hand raised, crown and fingers. She flips it over. On the back, File 23C. See also St. Bridget's? Her pulse stutters. There was no File 23C in the box. The ledger ended at 22. Someone still keeps the rest. Claire slides the photo into her pocket. She doesn't wake anyone. She just looks once more at her sister, sleeping under the quilt, the ribbon coiled at her wrist like a pulse. She looks at her parents on the couch, Lydia's head on Thomas's shoulder, his hand on the brass key now hung from a thread on the mantel. Ordinary peace, the kind that makes tomorrow dangerous to disturb. She steps onto the porch. The sky is torn open with stars. Down the street, a figure leans against the same mailbox, back turned, hood up. A camera strap crosses the shoulder. When she blinks, the figure's gone, but the mailbox flag is raised. She walks to it, slow, deliberate. Inside, dry despite the dew, another envelope, plain, no address. She opens it there under the street lamp. A single Polaroid again. The community hall now restored. Fresh paint, cleaned floors, new banners reading Youth Center reopening. Tomorrow night. At the bottom, the same handwriting, File 23C will open its doors. Claire exhales, half laugh, half dread. Not done yet, she murmurs. Behind her, the porch light flickers twice. She turns back toward the house. Through the window, Lily stirs in sleep, her hand rising just enough to tap the air twice. Tap, tap. The sound is almost lost to the night, but it travels through wet streets, down power lines, across the quiet river, to the old hall where, if you listen closely, a light in the storage room hums to